The familiar scent of my aunt's signature pot roast filled the dining room of the Morrison family estate. Every month, like clockwork, the entire extended family gathered here for dinner, a tradition that felt more like torture than togetherness. I adjusted my simple black dress, feeling distinctly out of place among the designer labels and flashy jewelry that adorned my relatives. "Sophie, you actually came." My cousin Elizabeth's voice dripped with fake enthusiasm as she air-kissed my cheeks. Her Cartier bracelet clinked against her wine glass, a not-so-subtle reminder of her success. I forced a polite smile. "Wouldn't miss it, Liz." The Morrison family dinners had become a monthly showcase of achievements, promotions and acquisitions. A parade of success where everyone competed to prove they were living up to the family name. Everyone except me, apparently. "Still working at that little financial firm?" Uncle James called out from across the room, not bothering to look up from his phone. He was the patriarch now after my grandfather passed away 5 years ago. The family real estate empire, Morrison Properties, had tripled under his leadership, a fact he never failed to mention. "Actually, I started my own consulting company," I said, taking a seat at the massive oak dining table. Elizabeth laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Oh right, your private practice. How's that going? Making ends meet?" Before I could respond, my cousin Michael chimed in. "Hey, at least she's trying. Not everyone can be as successful as the rest of us." The rest of the family chuckled. I took a long sip of water, letting the condensation from the glass cool my burning cheeks. They only knew. 8 years ago, I'd walked away from a prestigious position at Morrison Properties. Uncle James had offered me a safe career path, start in middle management, follow orders, and maybe in 20 years, I'd have a shot at a director position. The same path my cousins had happily accepted. "You're making a huge mistake," Uncle James had warned when I resigned. "Nobody leaves Morrison Properties. This family built an empire by sticking together." But I'd seen how they built that empire. Aggressive acquisitions, predatory lending practices, forcing small businesses out of their properties. The Morrison way of doing business left a trail of destroyed lives behind its impressive profit margins. So I left. Started from scratch. Spent years building something different. "Sophie's just different," my mother explained apologetically to anyone who asked. She'd never forgiven me for walking away from the family business. In her eyes, I'd chosen failure over loyalty. Aunt Patricia emerged from the kitchen, carrying her famous pot roast. "Everyone take your seats. Dinner's ready." I found myself wedged between Elizabeth and her husband Brad, a corporate lawyer who loved talking about his latest luxury car purchases. Across from me, Michael and his wife Diana showcased matching Rolex watches, wedding gifts from Uncle James. "So," Elizabeth turned to me as the food was served, "tell us about this consulting business of yours. Any big clients we might know?" The table went quiet, all eyes turning to me. This was their favorite part of family dinner, the moment they could remind me of my supposed failures. "I do all right," I said simply, cutting into my pot roast. "Still a nobody after 8 years?" Michael laughed. "Meanwhile, I just closed the Henderson deal. 40 million in pure profit." "The Henderson property?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "The historic apartment complex downtown?" "Not anymore," Michael grinned. "We're demolishing it next month. Luxury condos are the future. Those old tenants were paying way below market value anyway. 300 families live there," I said quietly. Uncle James waved his hand dismissively. "Business is business, Sophie. This is why you'll never succeed. You're too soft. Too concerned about strangers instead of family." Speaking of family, Elizabeth interjected, "Did you hear about our latest acquisition? That new development in the Bay Area? Daddy's planning to double the rent as soon as the papers are signed." My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A text from Sarah, my assistant. "Urgent. Morrison Properties loan application ready for review. Their primary lender backed out. They need approval by tomorrow or the Bay Area deal falls through." I suppressed a smile, remembering the meetings I'd had last week with their former lender. Amazing how quickly things could change when certain facts came to light. "Still driving that old Honda, Sophie?" Brad asked, smirking. "You know, I just got the new Mercedes AMG. I could talk to my dealer if you need financing help." More laughter around the table. Even my mother joined in, though she had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. Actually, I started, but Elizabeth cut me off. Oh darling, don't be embarrassed. We can't all be successful. Someone has to be the cautionary tale, right? My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. The table fell silent as my ringtone cut through their laughter. Sorry, I should take this, I said, standing up. It's about a loan approval. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What, for your Honda payments? I answered the phone, putting it on speaker. Yes, Sarah. Ms. Blackwood, sorry to interrupt your dinner, but we need your decision on the Morrison Properties loan application. It's for the Bay Area acquisition, $50 million total. Their financial statements show some concerning patterns, and given their history of predatory practices. The color drained from Uncle James's face. Elizabeth's fork clattered against her plate. Did you say Blackwood? Michael stammered. As in, Blackwood Financial Group. I smiled, finally letting my carefully maintained mask slip. Yes, cousin. As in the largest private lending firm on the West Coast. The one that just bought out your primary lender. The one that now holds the majority of Morrison Properties debt. The silence that fell over the dining room was deafening. That's impossible, Uncle James whispered. Blackwood is run by S.J. Blackwood. I've been trying to get a meeting with them for months. S.A. Blackwood, I said quietly. Sophie Jane Blackwood. The nobody you've been mocking for 8 years. Elizabeth's perfect makeup couldn't hide her shock. Michael looked like he might faint. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. But this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. About finally having the power to change how the Morrison family did business. Sarah, I spoke into the phone, my voice clear and confident. Hold the loan approval for now. I think it's time I had a proper meeting with Morrison Properties Management. After all, family should stick together, right? I ended the call and looked around the table at my stunned relatives. 8 years of dismissal, mockery, and condescension had led to this moment. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The real shock would come tomorrow, when they learned exactly what kind of changes their precious empire was about to undergo. Sometimes success isn't about making the most money or closing the biggest deals. Sometimes it's about building something meaningful, something that can force change even in the most resistant places. And sometimes, justice comes served with a side of pot roast. The Morrison Properties headquarters looked different from the outside. 8 years ago I'd walked out of these glass doors, vowing never to return. Now I stood in the marble lobby as owner of the company that held their fate in its hands. Miss Blackwood, the receptionist greeted me with a nervous smile. News travels fast in the business world, and yesterday's family dinner revelation had already made the rounds. Mr. Morrison and the board are waiting for you. I straightened my blazer and headed for the elevator, Sarah walking beside me with an iPad full of documents that would change everything. Their financial records are worse than we thought, Sarah murmured as we ascended. They've been hiding losses, manipulating tenant contracts, and there's evidence of systematic harassment of low-income residents. Just like old times, I replied, remembering why I'd left in the first place. The boardroom doors opened to reveal a very different scene from our monthly family dinners. Uncle James sat at the head of the table, his usual confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Elizabeth and Michael flanked him, both looking like they hadn't slept. Various board members filled the remaining seats, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Sophie, Uncle James stood, forcing a smile. Or should I say Ms. Blackwood? Quite a surprise you gave us last night. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said, taking a seat. We're here to discuss the future of Morrison Properties. Now see here, Michael started, but I cut him off. No, you see here, cousin. Your company is in trouble. Deep trouble. Your primary lender didn't just randomly decide to sell your debt to Blackwood Financial. They sold because we showed them evidence of your predatory practices, your hidden losses, and your systematic violation of housing laws. Elizabeth's perfectly manicured hands clenched into fists. You've been spying on us? I've been watching, I corrected. Watching as you forced families out of their homes. Watching as you violated housing codes and safety regulations. Watching as you built this empire on the backs of people who couldn't fight back. That's business, Uncle James snapped. The Morrison way of doing business. Not anymore. I nodded to Sarah, who distributed folders to everyone present. Inside you'll find 2 documents. The first is a complete audit of Morrison Properties' illegal practices. If this reaches the housing authority, you'll face criminal charges. The room erupted in nervous whispers as the board members flipped through the damning evidence. The second document, I continued, is a restructuring proposal. Blackwood Financial is prepared to refinance your entire debt portfolio, but with conditions. Uncle James's face reddened. Conditions? We don't need your charity, Sophie. We can find other lenders. Can you? I smiled. Your company's real financial state is about to become very public. Those luxury developments you're so proud of? Built with substandard materials to cut costs. Those voluntary relocations? Actually forced evictions of protected tenants. No lender will touch you once this comes out. You wouldn't, Elizabeth whispered. We're family. Family. I laughed. Was it family when you mocked my career choices? When you dismissed my concerns about ethical business practices? When you celebrated throwing people out of their homes? I stood up, walking to the front of the room. But this isn't about revenge. It's about change. Real change. What do you want? Uncle James asked, his voice heavy with defeat. Morrison Properties will establish a tenant protection program. All current residents will be offered fair long-term leases. The Henderson Complex? It stays as affordable housing, fully renovated to meet safety codes. That's ridiculous. Michael exploded. We'll lose millions. You'll lose everything if you don't agree, I replied calmly. But if you do, Blackwood Financial will provide favorable refinancing terms. We'll even partner on new developments, ethical ones that benefit communities instead of destroying them. A board member spoke up. Mr. Morrison, we should consider this. The company's reputation. This is blackmail, Elizabeth hissed. No, cousin. This is consequence. I turned to the board members. You have 24 hours to decide. Choose carefully. As I turned to leave, Uncle James called out. Why are you doing this, Sophie? Really? I paused at the door. 8 years ago I left because I couldn't change this company from the inside. Now I can force that change from the outside. The question is, will you change with it or go down fighting? The next 24 hours transformed Morrison Properties. The board voted overwhelmingly to accept my terms, overriding Uncle James's objections. Elizabeth resigned, unable to accept the new direction. Michael, surprisingly, asked to head the new tenant protection program. I have kids now, he admitted during a private meeting. I don't want them growing up thinking success means hurting people. The Henderson Complex residents received new fair-rate leases. The Bay Area development was redesigned to include affordable housing units. Morrison Properties stock actually rose when we announced the ethical restructuring. Turns out, doing good can be good business. My mother called a week later. I never understood why you left, she said quietly. I thought you were running away from success. But you were running toward something better, weren't you? I was running toward the right kind of success, I replied. The next family dinner was different. No more competitive boasting or subtle jabs. Uncle James was quieter, more thoughtful. The cousins who remained at the company spoke about community impact instead of profit margins. As I sat there eating Aunt Patricia's pot roast, I realized that sometimes the biggest victories aren't about proving people wrong, they're about showing them a better way to be right. Sarah texted me during dessert. Henderson Complex renovations started today. The tenants sent thank you cards. I smiled, looking around at my family. They weren't perfect, but they were changing. Sometimes that's the best revenge. Not destroying what hurt you, but transforming it into something better. Still thinking about your little Honda? Brad asked, trying to recapture some of his old arrogance. Actually, I replied, I'm thinking about the new community center we're building in the Henderson Complex. Would anyone like to help plan the opening ceremony? To my surprise, hands went up around the table. Change, when it finally comes, can be contagious. 1 year later, I stood on a podium outside the renovated Henderson Complex. Beside me, Uncle James prepared to cut the ribbon on the new community center. The residents who'd once feared Morrison Properties now filled the crowd, cheering. I was wrong about you, Sophie, Uncle James said quietly. About everything. It's not about being wrong or right, I replied. It's about doing better when you know better. The ribbon fell away and with it the last remnants of the old Morrison way of doing business. Sometimes success isn't measured in dollars or deals. Sometimes it's measured in lives changed, communities saved, and families transformed. As I watched children rush into the new playground, I thought about that family dinner a year ago. They'd mocked my failed career, never knowing I was building something more valuable than money, a way to force change in a system that desperately needed it. My phone buzzed. Another development company needed refinancing. Another opportunity to spread positive change. Ready to do some good? I asked Sarah. She smiled. Always, Ms. Blackwood. Always.